Jerry Lewis starred in a movie in 1963 that didn't receive a sequel until 45 years later, and even when the follow-up happened, it came in a very unexpected form. What makes the eventual sequel even more interesting is that the original movie was remade during the 45-year gap, and that remake also received a sequel before the original did. It's certainly an unusual sequence of events, and they're made even stranger by the length of time in which it all unfolded. Of course, remakes aren't anything new. In fact, the act of revisiting certain productions has resulted in some movie remakes that are better than the originals. Similarly, sequels can also take decades to happen. What makes Lewis' situation so bizarre is the fact that his movie had already been remade by the time the sequel to the original was released. While the 2008 effort didn't exactly make waves or come anywhere near to living up to the legacy of the original, it's still a compelling project for many reasons. 1963's The Nutty Professor received an animated sequel in 2008. Jerry Lewis reprised his role for the first time since 1963. The poster for 2008's The Nutty Professor, Facing the Fear. Lewis starred in a dual role as Professor Julius Kelp and Buddy Love in 1963's The Nutty Professor. The movie long remained the sole entry into the franchise. It was eventually remade in 1996 with Eddie Murphy in the title role, which strongly suggested Jerry Lewis would never have the chance to make a sequel. Surprisingly, that appeared to be false, as he reprised his 1963 role in 2008's The Nutty Professor 2, Facing the Fear. The animated project was a very soft sequel to the original, and it starred Drake Bell as the voice of Harold Kelp, Julius' grandson. The animated sequel follows roughly the same story as the original, but with Harold going on the journey of learning to be himself instead of Julius being forced to endure the same experience twice. That being said, Lewis voices both Julius Kelp and Buddy Love in the 2008 movie, so the professor's alter ego does feature. The Nutty Professor 2 was a direct-to-video release and wasn't particularly well received. Jerry Lewis' 2008 sequel came 8 years after Eddie Murphy's Nutty Professor 2. The Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps was very different from Jerry Lewis' sequel. It's no surprise that Eddie Murphy's remake of the Jerry Lewis movie was the first to receive a sequel, as Lewis' animated effort seemed to come out of nowhere. The 1996 remake was very successful, so The Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps was released in 2000. Murphy's sequel didn't perform quite as well as his first effort, so a trilogy never materialized. So, there were 8 years when the franchise was inactive before Facing the Fear came along.